In the endless depths of the warp, where reality and thought coil into the same maddening spiral, something new began to stir. It was not born in silence nor in flame, but in a sound. A broken laugh, faint and alien, carried like a contagion through the tides of unreality. It echoed where no voice should exist, threading through the psychic storms like a melody of mockery. The warp had known countless screams, the roars of demons, the whispers of gods, but never laughter. Not like this. The echo grew, resonating across the Imperium. Great entities paused in their eternal games to listen. The realm of chaos shuddered. Even Tzench, ever-shifting, ever-knowing, turned an unseen gaze toward the disturbance. The laughter danced through his domain like a flame through parchment, spreading, unpredictable, joyous in its destruction. For the first time in an age, the architect of fate could not foresee its path. Across the rotting gardens of Nurgle, where disease bloomed and life decayed in harmony, the plague god's laughter faltered. His demons convulsed in confusion, their smiles twisting into unease as the foreign sound infected their rhythm. The air itself seemed to mock them, a giggle threading through the groans of the dying. In Slaanish's halls of endless indulgence, courtiers fell silent as a shrill cackle tore through the symphony of their pleasures, offbeat human wrong. Even Khorne's endless battlefield trembled for a heartbeat as his warriors paused mid-slaughter, their ears ringing with the alien mirth of something that laughed without purpose, without rage, without bloodlust. Something had entered their realm uninvited, something that belonged to none of them. In the endless chasm between thought and flesh, the sound took form. Fragments of shattered psyche gathered, molded by the warp's flux. It was not a soul as the demons knew it, no offering of fear or faith, but a wound made of will. A being ripped from another universe entirely, thrust into this one by accident or cosmic irony. The laughter rose again, now deeper, fuller, echoing across the void as if it found the entire concept of reality amusing. The warp reacted. It always did. It always did. It sought to define what it could not comprehend, shaping the intruder into a reflection of its madness. Limbs formed, crooked and wrong, bending and twisting as if drawn by a hand that had forgotten anatomy. The flesh painted itself white like porcelain under a dying sun. Hair sprouted in wild green tufts, lips stretched into a red wound that smiled even as it bled. Eyes opened, madness gazed upon madness. The being blinked once and laughed again, louder now until even the demons screamed in agony to silence him. His presence fractured the psychic landscape, turning rivers of raw emotion into ribbons of carnival light. Colors bled together into impossible hues. The very laws of chaos bent around him, unsure whether to worship or flee. He stood in the midst of it all, bare and broken, yet utterly alive. The clown prince of crime had entered hell itself, and hell was uncertain whether to laugh with him or run. He took a breath, or something like it, and glanced around, eyes wide with wonder. "Oh, now this," he whispered, his voice a silky rasp, "this is new." His words rippled through the ether like poison. They had no right to exist here, yet they persisted, reshaping the psychic winds to carry their echo. He knelt, touching the molten ground of unreality, watching it bubble and shift beneath his hand. "Oh, beautiful," he murmured, giggling. "You're all out of your minds," the warp answered him. Faces rose and melted in the air, voices hissing names that no mortal tongue could speak. They tried to consume him, to define him as demon, mortal, or god, but his laughter denied them. Their reality fed on belief, and he believed in nothing. That alone made him untouchable. A great shadow loomed behind him, its form flickering through endless shapes. Bird, serpent, flame, and eye. Tzench's voice slithered through the void, each word reshaping the space around it. "Intruder of the outer worlds." "What are you?" The Joker turned slowly, lips twitching upward into a grin that cut through the darkness. "Me? Just the punchline." The god hesitated. Never had a mortal spoken to him so, unafraid, unbound. The laughter returned, rolling like thunder through the Imperium. It spread from that single point of madness, infecting the dreams of demons, twisting the very sound of the warp itself. The joke was spreading, and even the chaos gods could not understand it. Reality rippled. The laughter grew stronger, louder, sharper, until entire regions of the warp began to warp anew. The flesh rivers turning into spirals of color, demon hosts collapsing into forms of grotesque comedy. A Slaaneshi demonette began to paint her claws with blood, giggling uncontrollably until she tore her own throat open. A Nurglite plague-bearer burst into spores of confetti. Somewhere in the realm of Khorne, A bloodthirster laughed until it forgot what anger was. The Joker stood amid it all, head tilted, eyes bright. Well, he mused softly, looks like the joke's on everyone. He turned his gaze upward, sensing something vast beyond the horizon of thought, a light that burned like judgment, cold and merciless. It watched him from beyond time, beyond reason. He could feel it, the Imperium's god, the corpse upon the throne. The laughter faltered for a heartbeat, then it rose again, manic and triumphant. "Oh, I see you up there," he whispered. "Watching. Waiting. Wait, see if I can make you smile." The warp shivered. Somewhere, 1,000 astropaths screamed as their visions filled with laughter not their own. The Imperium felt it, an infection without form. A joke whispered in their dreams. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, something old and terrible began to awaken, drawn to the sound. The clown looked around him, the void of madness now his stage, and spread his arms wide as if welcoming an audience only he could see. "Let's begin the show." And with that, the laughter roared again, echoing through eternity, defying gods, corrupting stars, and heralding the birth of the universe's cruelest joke. The laughter did not fade, it spread. Through the dark tides of the immaterium, through the veins of madness itself, the sound slithered onward like a contagion. Demons who heard it wept or screamed, unsure why their perfect chaos now seemed mockery. The warp was no stranger to horror, but this was different. Horror had rules here, rituals, pacts, purposes. This laughter had none. It was chaos without faith, madness without devotion, and that made it something the warp could not classify. The Joker drifted through it all, his steps leaving ripples on nothingness. Each laugh seemed to birth new color in the darkness, streaks of red, green, and white that bent through unreality like bleeding oil. Shapes twisted to greet him, hoping to consume this strange visitor, only to fall apart as his laughter touched them. He was no demon. He was no demon. He was not even mortal. He was an idea, a joke told by a universe that did not believe in gods. He wandered through a realm of endless teeth, a place where Khorne's rage manifested as mountains of skulls and rivers of burning blood. The scent of metal and smoke filled the void, yet the air trembled when he arrived. Bloodletters snarled, their blades trembling in uncertain hands. The Joker smiled, hands open, palms upward as though greeting an audience. "Ah, my kind of crowd," he said softly. So serious, so red. The nearest demon roared, its blade aflame. It lunged at him, striking down with divine fury, but the strike met only laughter. The sword passed through the man without resistance, as though the clown was made of shadow. When the demon blinked, he was behind it, whispering into its ear, "You're killing for a god who doesn't even know your name." That's not rage, darling, that's comedy. The demon screamed as its own form began to convulse, its skull cracking into a grin before bursting into ash. The warp rippled again. Even Khorne's realm recoiled. From somewhere deep within, a voice growled, ancient and furious, but the Joker only tilted his head amused. "Anger issues," he said, chuckling. "You should see someone about that." He kept walking, unbothered by the bleeding skies or the walls of bone that rose around him. The warp tried to swallow him again, conjuring illusions, faces of the damned, voices whispering promises. They spoke in every tongue, offering him power, glory, eternity. He only laughed harder. "We're all selling the same bad joke," he said. "And the punchline? Nobody gets out alive. Nobody gets out alive." The warp did not know how to respond. It twisted, testing him, trying to see what he feared. It showed him his death 1,000 ways, shot, burned, broken, betrayed. Each time he clapped his hands and bowed, laughing harder. A bravo. He shouted into the storm. "Lungkor." Something stirred in the distance then, a presence far greater than the demons. It slithered closer, reshaping itself with every thought that touched it. 1,000 wings, 1,000 eyes, each seeing past time itself. Tidiach, the architect of fate, materialized, his form ever-changing, his gaze unreadable. He studied the clown before him with the curiosity of a god dissecting a paradox. "You do not belong," Tizench said, his voice rippling through 10 dimensions at once. "You are not soul, not demon, not warp beast. What are you?" The Joker looked up, meeting the god's shifting gaze. "I'm the thing that happens when the universe forgets to make sense," he said, smiling. Little mistake, a little laugh. Tizench regarded him in silence. Power radiated from the god, but the clown only leaned forward as though listening to a whisper. "You seek chaos," Tizench said finally, "but you serve none of the gods. You mock even me." The Joker's smile widened. "A chaos?" He chuckled softly. "Oh no, no, no. Chaos still wants something. You lot want worship, blood, fear, power. I just want to see the look on everyone's face when they realize the joke was on them all along. The air trembled as Tzanchi's form wavered. It was impossible. No mortal should have been able to unnerve the changer of ways. Yet this thing before him was not mortal, not bound to logic, not tied to purpose. It existed without a reason, and that made it untouchable. Tzanchi a claw, offering a gift, a spark of power, the same he had offered countless mortal pawns. Take this, the god said. Spread your laughter. Yes, spread your laughter. Serve me and I will make you eternal. The Joker tilted his head, pretending to think. Serve, he whispered. I don't do that word. It ruins the fun. His grin sharpened. Besides, if you can't make yourself laugh, what good are you as a god? Before the changer could respond, the clown raised his hand. With a single flick of his wrist, the air burst into color. Green fire spilled across the landscape, reshaping it into grotesque parodies. Khorne's skulls turned into jesters' masks, Slaaneish's marble palaces into twisted circus tents. Even the blood rivers began to bubble with laughter. Tzanchi recoiled. He had seen mortals break reality before, but never like this, without focus, without intent, purely for the absurd joy of it. The Joker spun in place, his laughter rising again until even the god's words were drowned out. You think you understand madness, the clown shouted into the void, but you're also organized about it. He threw his arms wide and the warp itself seemed to laugh with him, mocking its own gods. The colors brightened, bleeding into one another until all distinctions vanished. For an instant the warp became pure sound, endless laughter without a source, without an end. When it finally quieted, Tzanchi was gone. The Joker stood alone in the aftermath, breathing slowly, his eyes glowing faintly. Around him, reality tried to mend itself, but cracks remained. He reached out, tracing one with a fingertip, watching light leak through. Oops, he said softly, smiling to himself. I guess I broke it. He turned toward the shimmering tear in the fabric of unreality and stepped through without hesitation. Somewhere beyond, the Imperium waited, unaware that its next great plague was already laughing. The void echoed once more as his voice faded into the stars. And now let's find out if your little galaxy has a sense of humor. He fell through the tear between realities like a shard of broken glass slipping into flesh. The warp screamed around him as he passed, and when he emerged, the sky above was no longer an ocean of madness but a bleeding crimson expanse, thick with smoke and the scent of burnt iron. Beneath him stretched a world of ash and ruin, a demon world carved from the bones of countless sacrifices, where chaos reigned absolute. The air pulsed like a living thing, heavy with whispers, promises, and the ceaseless echo of worship. The Joker landed softly upon a field of blackened sand, his boots sinking into the remains of things once human. He looked around with a child's wonder, his grin widening as he breathed in the sulfur and rot. Ah, he murmured, raising his arms to the sky. A home sweet hell, home sweet hell. His laughter rolled out, low and hollow, and the ground beneath his feet trembled as though the world itself were listening. From the distance came movement, twisted silhouettes emerging from the fog, their bodies shifting between forms. Some walked, others crawled, their flesh painted in colors that bled and reformed as they moved. Demons of Slaanesh, drawn by the scent of new sensations, surrounded him. Their beauty was terrible, their voices a melody of hunger. One stepped forward, her skin glimmering like polished ivory. "Well, immortal," she whispered, though the word itself was a hiss of mockery. "You should not exist here." The Joker turned slowly, his face illuminated by the dim violet glow of their bodies. "The sweetheart," he said, smiling wide, "I don't even exist where I'm supposed to." The demon hissed and struck at him with claws that could shred armor, but they found no flesh, only mist. He reappeared behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You're all too serious," he whispered into the curve of her ear. "Where's your sense of humor?" The demon screamed as her body began to warp, her face twisting into a rictus grin she could not control. Her laughter joined his, shrill, endless wrong, and soon spread through the others like infection. Within moments, the field was filled with the sound of hysterical laughter. The demons convulsed, their forms distorting into grotesque reflections of mirth. Stretched smiles, painted faces, masks of mockery. They fell to their knees, laughing until their essence tore apart into ribbons of light that spun away into the air. The Joker watched in delight, clapping slowly. "Beautiful," he said softly. "A pure art." He turned to the sky, spreading his arms wide again as if addressing an invisible audience. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, welcome to the grandest show this side of sanity. His voice carried far across the wasteland, and the warp seemed to answer him with faint echoes of laughter, carried on the wind like ghostly applause. He began to walk, and with each step, the world around him changed. Structures rose from the ground, twisted mockeries of cathedrals, their stained glass shifting into images of jesters and fools. Towers bent like melted candles. Colors pulsed in the air, neon and sickly, as though painted by a mad god. What had been a demon world became something new, something far worse. A carnival. The soil turned to cracked marble tiles painted in chaotic spirals. Fire erupted in bursts of green and violet, illuminating grotesque statues that moved when no one looked. The sky split with streaks of color like bleeding fireworks. From nowhere, music began, a warped circus tune played on instruments made of bone and sinew. The Joker's eyes gleamed with feverish joy. "And now this," he whispered, "feels right." Soon the demons came again, but they were different now. Drawn by curiosity or fear, they approached the carnival cautiously. Demons of Nurgle waddled in, flies buzzing around their bloated bodies, their laughter bubbling through rotted throats. From the shadows came the sleek forms of Slaneshi dancers, their movements fluid and sensuous. And then from the cracks in the earth, horrors of Khorne crawled forth, their axes dripping with molten rage. They did not fight, they stared, transfixed by the spectacle before them. The Joker leapt onto a stage that rose from the ground like an open wound, his voice booming through the heavy air. Ladies and gentlemen, monsters and maniacs, you've been playing the same games for too long. War, lust, plague, change. All so predictable. But me? Oh, I bring something new. He bowed low, his laughter echoing through the crowd. I bring the joke that never ends. The demons roared, their voices a mix of fury and fascination. Khorne's servants bellowed for battle, but their rage faltered when they found their hands trembling. The blades they wielded turned bright and reflective, catching the flicker of impossible light. They saw themselves in those reflections, not warriors, but caricatures painted with the same white and red as their new master. The laughter began again, not from the Joker this time, but from them. It came unbidden, spilling out of their throats, unstoppable. Soon the entire world was consumed by the sound. The carnival spread across the horizon, transforming cities into theaters of madness. Demons danced in grotesque joy, their shapes shifting into parodies of themselves. And somewhere, deep in the Imperium, the Chaos Gods watched. Slaanesh felt fascination, Nurgle curiosity, Khorne rage. But it was Teesant who smiled. He saw potential in this madness, a new kind of power born from meaninglessness itself. Yet even he hesitated, for the laughter was not bound by fate or design. It moved on its own, like wildfire across dry soul stuff. The Joker stood atop his stage, arms raised as the demons danced below him. His grin never wavered. "See?" he shouted to no one and everyone. "You don't need a god to go mad, you just need a reason that doesn't make sense." The air pulsed. The ground shook. Above, the sky split open once more, revealing the endless abyss of the warp. For a fleeting moment, the carnival of insanity became something divine, a reflection of the Joker's mind imposed upon eternity. Then the laughter turned darker, deeper. The colors drained from the air. The demons' joy twisted into agony as their forms began to unravel, their essence consumed by the very madness they had embraced. The Joker only watched, his eyes glinting beneath the flickering lights. "Oh, don't cry," he said softly as the world screamed around him. "The show must go on." And somewhere beyond the veil, the warp itself began to whisper back, laughing with him. Across the cold expanse of the segmentum obscurus, the laughter spread like a psychic plague. It began as faint whispers within the warp-touched minds of astropaths, unwelcome sounds carried on thought currents. Then it grew louder, clearer, until every choir in communication with the warp recoiled as one. Some clawed their faces, others bit their tongues, desperate to silence what could not be silenced. Those who survived spoke only of the same thing, a sound that mocked them, not in words but in tone, like the universe itself had gone mad. On the forge world of Vrax Primus, the disturbance reached its crescendo. The planet was a fortress of iron and devotion, its surface scorched black by centuries of production for the God Emperor's endless wars. Titan engines strode across the horizon, their footsteps shaking the ground, while the air burned with incense and machine oil. The priests of the Omnissiah worked without rest, their hymns rising in static-laced monotony, until the laughter came. It was faint at first, like the hum of a misaligned cogitator. Then it echoed through every Vox channel, every servo skull, every data stream. It crawled through the noosphere and infected the canticles of praise. Tick priests froze mid-chant as the sacred machines began to mock their own voices, repeating their hymns in tones of mockery and mirth. Sparks showered the cathedra of the Mechanicus as the cogitators began to stutter and sing. In the heart of the Manufactorum, Archmagos Hella Ven stood before the great plasma reactor, his augmetics whirring in distress. He tried to shut down the corrupted circuits, but the machine spirit refused his commands. Instead, the reactor itself began to speak, its deep rumble forming syllables that should not exist. A knock, 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 it whispered in binary. "Who's there?" Ven froze. The laughter that followed came not from any speaker, but from within his mind. He felt it crawl behind his eyes, tugging at his sanity like a puppet string. The Archmagos dropped to his knees, oil dripping from trembling augmetic fingers. "A machine god, preserve us," he whispered. But there was no answer, only more laughter rippling through his thoughts until it became his own. By the time the Skitarii enforcers arrived, the Archmagos was gone, nothing left but a smear of blackened oil and a smile carved into the wall behind him, burned there by the heat of his final scream. Elsewhere on the same world, the choir of sanctioned psychers had begun to convulse. Bound in chains of silver and faith, they screamed as one voice. "He comes," they shrieked. "The fool who mocks the throne, the laughing wound." Their eyes melted into white light before their skulls burst from the psychic pressure. The astropathic signals carried their death cries across the void. On a distant battle barge, high above the ashes of Rax Primus, an Inquisitor watched the readings unfold. Inquisitor Severin Marat stood silent, his face cast in the glow of hollow screens filled with static and data corruption. The laughter had reached his ship too. It slipped through the Gellerfield like a whisper through a confession booth. His acolytes trembled, afraid to speak. Marat was no stranger to horror. He had seen demons crawl through the eyes of children, heard the chants of cults that worshipped diseases, witnessed planets burn in holy fire. But this was different. There was no ritual, no heresy, no pattern, only madness that spread without logic or form. He pressed a hand against the Rosarius at his chest, feeling the faint hum of its protection. "Identify the source," he said coldly. "Impossible, my lord," the navigator replied. "The signal exists within the warp itself. It's the warp." Marat's gaze hardened. "Nothing is without a source." "Trace it." The navigator swallowed, nodding, her third eye bleeding faintly from strain as she stared into the tides of unreality. She saw visions, worlds turning to theaters, demons painted in laughter, a figure standing in the center of it all, smiling beneath green hair and white skin. He turned toward her, though he should not have been able to see her across the gulf between realms. "Abu," she screamed, collapsing to the floor. Marat was at her side instantly, his voice calm but iron-edged. "What did you see?" Her lips trembled. "A man." "No, not a man. A joke pretending to be one Vien. The be one." Her eyes rolled back and her last words came out as a whisper, soft and trembling. "He's laughing at the gods." Marat rose, his expression unreadable. Around him the ship's lights flickered and faint echoes of laughter seeped from the Vox systems, distorting prayers into grotesque humor. He turned toward his assembled retinue, his warrior adept, the penitent sister Ilera, the machine-bound tech priest Korm, and the half-dead psyker bound in psychic chains. "Prepare the Gloria Invictus," he said. "We're going hunting." The psyker's eyes opened, black veins crawling across her skin. "You can't hunt a joke," she whispered. Marat looked down at her, his face lit by the dim, strobing lights. "Aye. Then we'll see if it laughs when it burns." Far below, Vrax Primus burned. Factories collapsed in on themselves as the laughter consumed the machine spirits and mortals alike. The sky turned crimson, the smoke rising like a pyre. From orbit, the world looked like a grinning skull, a fitting monument to the beginning of something no one in the Imperium could yet understand. And somewhere beyond the veil, the laughter grew louder still, echoing through the warp like a prophecy of ruin. The webway trembled. Its crystal corridors, woven between realities by the dying genius of the Eldari, resonated with a sound that did not belong. The laughter bled through the labyrinth of light and shadow like a crack in glass, echoing from one hidden gate to another. Ancient wards flickered. Sigils of protection dimmed. The song of the Eldari, once elegant and tragic, was now invaded by a dissonant note that turned beauty into mockery. Deep within one of the forgotten passageways, a troop of harlequins moved with silent grace, their masks gleaming under the pale shimmer of webway light. Each step they took was part of a ritual older than memory, a dance that was half prayer, half performance. They were servants of Siguraish, the laughing god, tricksters and storytellers, but also watchers of the warp's chaos. Tonight their stage had changed. The air around them pulsed with alien laughter, so loud that even their souls could feel it. The troop halted as their shadows raised a gloved hand. Her mask, carved in the likeness of serene joy, tilted slightly as she listened. The laughter was everywhere and nowhere at once, mocking, wild, unrestrained. She could not tell if it was mocking them or their god. "It is laughter," whispered one of the mimes, his voice trembling despite his painted smile. But not his. The shadows said nothing. She reached out with her mind, slipping through the psychic currents like a dancer between notes. What she found made her recoil. The warp shimmered before her in visions, worlds burning, humans weeping, demons convulsing in hysterical joy. And at the center of it all stood a single figure, its grin so wide it split the mind to look upon it. He was painting the warp with madness, and even chaos itself was his canvas. Her heart stilled. There were few things in all existence that could frighten a harlequin. But this laughter was different. It had no meaning, no lesson, no rhythm. It was the absence of all pattern, the death of all purpose, a joke that never ended. She withdrew from the vision, her movements sharp, almost panicked. "We must warn the mask of the veiled tear," she said, her voice low but steady. "And through them the black library. The warp has birthed a shadow we do not understand." The troop obeyed, turning as one toward the shimmering gate ahead. But even as they moved, the webway shuddered again. The light dimmed to a sickly green. Something was inside with them. A flicker of color darted across the crystal walls, red, white, and green. Then came a sound, faint at first, then growing until it drowned the very hum of the webway itself. Laughter, human and yet not. The shadows froze every nerve alight. "Impossible," she breathed. "He should not be here." The air before them rippled like liquid glass, and the laughter took form. The Joker stepped through the distortion, his hands in his pockets, his head tilted as though admiring the scenery. His smile gleamed under the false light. "Well now," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Look at this. Look at this." A hallway full of jesters, my kind of crowd. The harlequins spread out instantly, forming a circle around him. Shuriken pistols hummed softly, their aim steady. Yet none fired. Something in the way he moved, the way he grinned. It made even their perfected instincts falter. "Who are you?" The shadows demanded. He laughed, tapping his temple. "A comedian, sweetheart. Just trying to make the universe laugh before it kills itself." He took a step forward, and the walls of the webway trembled in response. The harlequins' masks flickered, one smiling, one crying, one twisting into something unrecognizable. The shadows extended her staff, light gathering at its tip. "This place is forbidden to your kind," she warned. He raised his brows in mock offense. "My kind? Oh, you wound me. I'm not like them. I'm something new. You might say I'm between gods." A punchline they don't understand. His grin widened until it hurt to look at. "And neither do you." The shadows fired. Light burped from her staff, fracturing through the air, striking him full in the chest. For a heartbeat, his form dissolved, then reformed instantly, laughing harder. "Oh, that tickled," he said, clapping his hands. "You folks take your jokes way too seriously." The troop moved as one, their acrobatics a blur of color and death. They struck from every side, blades of light flashing, pistols spitting shurikens, but every strike missed, every bullet curved away as if the webway itself bent to protect him. The Joker turned slowly, watching them dance and kill nothing. "You know," he said, "you're good, but you lack, punch." With a snap of his fingers, the webway reacted. The walls rippled, turning into mirrors, each reflection showing the harlequins' own masked faces laughing back at them. The laughter grew louder, distorted, and soon it was no longer theirs. One by one, the harlequins froze, clutching their heads as the sound wormed its way inside. The Joker walked among them, serene and amused as their bodies began to tremble and crack. The shadows tried to summon a portal, but her concentration broke as the mirrors shattered. Fragments of herself laughed in her mind, taunting her with voices that sounded like her own. "We dance for gods," one whispered, "and he dances for no one." She fell to her knees as the Joker leaned close, crouching beside her. His voice dropped to a whisper, gentle, almost kind. "Tell your god," he said, "that the fools come to town." Then he was gone. When the surviving harlequin regained consciousness, she stood alone amid the shattered glass and silence. Her mask was cracked, her vision blurred. In her trembling hands she held her staff, now covered in faint smeared red, a mark shaped like a smile. She fled, running through the webway toward the nearest gate. Her mind burned with what she had seen. Sigorak would have to know. The laughing god had always been the trickster, the jester among deities. But now there was something worse, something that laughed at him. And for the first time in 10,000 years, even the laughing god would not find it funny. The void outside the Gloria Invictus was silent, vast and cold. Yet within that silence, something laughed. It was not a sound the ear could hear. It existed between thought and static, a vibration that crawled through vox channels, a whisper that mocked every prayer whispered into the dark. Inquisitor Severin Marat stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the shifting clouds of the warp beyond the viewport. His reflection looked back at him in the glass, tired, hard-eyed and unwavering. Around him the ship creaked with the unease of its crew, their faith tested by something none could name. The Invictus was a vessel built for one purpose, to hunt that which defied reason. Its halls were lined with purity seals and the bones of saints, its engines warded by rites that had not been uttered since the days of the Great Crusade. Yet even here, sanctified and shielded, the laughter still seeped in. The ship's choir had fallen silent days ago, their minds shattered by psychic interference. The navigator refused to open her third eye again, muttering that the warp was a smiling back. Marat turned from the viewport, his black coat shifting as he walked to the stratagem. His retinue awaited him there, a collection of souls too broken or too devoted to live anywhere but in his shadow. Ilara, once a sister Repentia, knelt sharpening her eviscerator blade, the faintest tremor in her hands betraying her nerves. Korm, the tech priest, stood like an iron monolith, his face half machine, his augmetics twitching from unseen data corruption. Unseen data corruption. The Psycha Viril sat bound in rune-inscribed chains, her skin etched with scars that glowed faintly when she breathed. Beside them stood Trone, Marat's interrogator, a man who had seen too much and believed too little. Marat's voice was calm when he spoke. The phenomenon has spread beyond Vrax Primus. Astropathic choirs across 3 systems have reported the laughter. Whole sectors are beginning to isolate themselves. Pilgrims are self-immolating in the streets. We cannot allow this infection to continue. Trone folded his arms, eyes shadowed. And what exactly is the infection, my lord? Demonic possession, a psychic echo, or something worse? Marat studied him for a long moment. Worse, he said simply. This is not possession, it is persuasion. It is persuasion. The Psycha laughed then, low and bitter. It speaks through thought, she whispered, her voice shaking. And not in words, but in meaning. It doesn't promise anything, it just makes you see how small you are, and then you start laughing too. Ilara looked up, her eyes hard behind the scars of penance. Then let me silence it. Marat ignored her. Defending. Our next destination is the Fallow Reach. Reports indicate the anomaly has manifested on a shrine world there. A holy site turned carnival. The word was foreign in his mouth, heavy with disgust. We will descend, identify the source, and cleanse it with fire. The tech priest's voice crackled with distortion. A machine spirit's protest, vox interference growing. The laughter resonates in binary, spreading through code. We risk contagion. Then purge the systems, Marat said. Anything that laughs dies. For a moment none spoke. The faint hum of the engines filled the silence. Outside the warp shimmered like liquid fire, threads of impossible color weaving through the void. Marat could feel it pressing against the Geller field, testing it, mocking it. His faith held steady, though he knew even faith could fracture under enough laughter. When the ship finally broke through into real space, the shrine world of Bellis Corona came into view, a jewel once bright in the Emperor's light, now corrupted beyond recognition. From orbit they could see it. The planet's once holy cathedrals twisted into warped shapes, their spires bent into grins, their bells tolling with laughter instead of hymns. Entire continents glowed faintly, like embers of madness burning in the dark. As they descended through the atmosphere, the vox crackled with broken transmissions. Voices screamed prayers that dissolved into giggles. The air itself seemed to pulse with mockery. Even through the gunmetal walls of the shuttle, Marat could feel the wrongness seeping in. They landed on the outskirts of a city once known as Glorium. Now it was a theater of ruin. The streets were filled with mutilated statues of saints, their faces carved into smiles. The bodies of priests hung from arches, their mouths stretched wide, painted red. From somewhere deep within the city came the faint echo of carnival music, warped and distant, carried on the wind. Ilara gripped her weapon tighter. "It's desecration," she said. "It's performance," Trone muttered. Marat raised a hand. "No words, no sound unless I command it." He stepped forward, his boots crunching over shards of glass and bone. Every wall bore painted sigils, but not of chaos. These were crude, childlike symbols. Faces, laughter, jokes written in blood. Then they saw the crowd. Hundreds of them, pilgrims, priests, children, all gathered in the plaza, motionless. They stood before a stage of bone and rust. Upon it, a single figure moved beneath the dim glow of burning candles. He was slender, clothed in the remnants of a preacher's robes painted green and purple. His face white as chalk, mouth carved red. He spoke softly into the silence. "You all take this so seriously. The Emperor, chaos, faith, death. It's all one big punchline you're too afraid to hear." Marat's hand went to his bolt pistol. "By the throne," he whispered. The figure's eyes flicked toward him, and for a moment the air froze. The laughter stopped. Every pilgrim turned in unison, their faces splitting into smiles. The Joker grinned. "Ma, the audience has arrived." The psyker screamed as blood poured from her nose. "It's him," she gasped. "The one from the visions." Marat raised his pistol, firing. The bolt shell struck the stage and exploded, but when the smoke cleared, the Joker stood unharmed, laughing. "A bang," he said, mimicking the gun's recoil. "Oh, that's rich." And then the world began to laugh again. The laughter rose like a tide, drowning all thought. It came from everywhere, walls, sky, ground, from within the very bones of those who heard it. The plaza trembled as the sound swelled into a grotesque harmony of screams and delight. Marat's retinue staggered, hands pressed to their heads, while the Joker spread his arms, basking in the madness as if it were applause. "Welcome, welcome, welcome," he cried, his voice booming across the square. "But to the greatest show this side of sanity, you're just in time for the main act." His words rippled through the crowd, and the pilgrims began to sway, their movements jerky, puppet-like. Laughter burst from their throats, high-pitched, mechanical, unending. Marat fired again, and again the shots hit nothing. "Enough," he said. His voice was calm, iron-willed. "You are not a god. You are not even chaos. You're noise, and I silence noise." The Joker's grin didn't fade. "Silence? You really think silence wins in the end?" He stepped backward, and the abomination behind him began to dissolve into swirling motes of color. "The punchline's coming, Inquisitor. You'll see it soon enough. We all will." He snapped his fingers, and the sound was like a detonation. The plaza shattered. Marat was thrown backward, crashing through a column of bone. He hit the ground hard, his vision dimming. Through the haze he saw the Joker vanish into the light, laughter fading into the hum of the warp. When Marat rose, he was alone among the ruins. The air was heavy with the scent of burnt incense and blood. Trone lay unconscious nearby, Corm still whispering machine prayers to no response. Ilara's body was gone. Varel's chains were all that remained. The laughter had stopped, but the silence it left behind was worse. Marat looked to the sky, where the clouds twisted into faint shapes, a smile vast and fading. He clenched his fist. "You want to play," he murmured. "Then I'll play, but I write the ending." And somewhere, faint and mocking, the laughter answered him again. The warp churned like a wounded beast. Where once its tides followed the ancient rhythms of madness ordained by the gods, now they pulsed with new, unnatural energy. The Joker's laughter had not merely entered the Imperium, it had changed it. The echo of his presence spread like infection, reshaping the psychic landscape with every breath of mockery. Across its infinite realms, demons screamed in confusion as their forms twisted beyond recognition, parodying the horrors they once embodied. In Khorne's endless killing fields, bloodletters paused mid-slaughter. The crimson sky rippled, and suddenly their roars turned into hysterical giggles. One warrior swung his axe, but instead of blood, ribbons poured forth. Mockery made flesh. The demon stared in disbelief before falling to its knees, cackling until its skull split open in mirth. Khorne himself stirred upon his brass throne, his voice a thunderous snarl that shook the dimensions. Yet even his fury trembled, for within it he heard laughter, not from without, but from his own realm. In the garden of Nurgle, rot bloomed into colors that should never exist. Plague-bearers began painting the walls of decay with pus and bile, sculpting faces that smiled back at them. The great unclean one watched in wonder as his children collapsed into fits of joy. their laughter bubbling through rotted lungs. He reached down, curious, and found a single playing card resting upon the soil. A joker, its grin drawn in dried blood. Slaanesh's palaces fared no better. Music turned shrill, and beauty curdled into grotesque performance. The courtiers of excess danced until their limbs broke, their ecstasy dissolving into hysteria. Mirrors reflected not their divine forms but painted faces, mouths stretched into crimson smiles. The Dark Prince looked into one such mirror and felt something strange. Fear. For the first time, pleasure itself had become a mockery. And in the twisting labyrinths of Tanch, where every thought was manipulation, the laughter crawled through the fabric of sorcery like a parasite. Spells backfired. Prophecies unraveled. The Changer of Ways found his own reflection grinning back at him. Every vision he conjured ended the same way, with a white face and red mouth whispering, a knock, knock. The warp was losing coherence. Its gods, for all their power, were bound to the emotions that defined them. But the Joker's madness was free of such limits. It was chaos without belief, destruction without devotion. The concept spread faster than any plague, turning faith itself into parody. Meanwhile, in real space, the consequences bled through the veil. On the bridge of the Gloria Invictus, Inquisitor Marat stood over the hollow display, watching the readings fluctuate wildly. The Geller field shuddered, its edges flickering like a candle in stormlight. The warp beyond screamed, not with the voices of demons, but with laughter so loud it rattled the hull. The barriers thinning, Corm reported, his mechanical tone strained by static. A reality is misbehaving. Marat's hands tightened behind his back. He defined misbehaving. The tech priest hesitated. The laws of form are flexible. I see Vox spirits smiling through the data. Machine code rewriting itself into rhythm. There is humor in the binary. Trone swore softly. It's spreading faster than we can contain. Then burn it out, Marat said. Our purity protocols, all systems. A purity does not amuse it, Corm answered, almost whispering. It laughs at cleansing. The lights dimmed, flickering between crimson and sickly green. The ship's choir, though silenced, began to hum through the walls, a low, tuneless murmur that grew into a chuckle. Somewhere below decks, the servitors started chanting, their mechanical voices repeating the same line over and over. Why so serious? The Psychovarel's absence was a wound in the crew's faith, and it showed. Marat felt the pressure of the warp against his mind, a presence watching, smiling. He's not done, he said. He's testing the boundaries. The warp's responding to him, reshaping itself in his image. Ilara's absence weighed on him more than he'd admit. The memory of her final laughter lingered like a scar. He could not let it happen again, not to the crew, not to the Imperium. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared. Corm's mechadendrites lashed as he read the displays. A rift is opening. 50 kilometers off the prow. The warp is bleeding. Marat turned to the viewport. Space was tearing itself apart. The void glowed with streaks of impossible color, swirling into a spiral. And from within that maelstrom came sound, not the roar of engines, not the screams of the damned, but music. Twisted carnival music, echoing through the vacuum of space. Emperor, preserve us, Trone whispered. The spiral widened, and from its depths something emerged, a shadow, faint at first, then solid. A shape walking across the void as if it were solid ground. The Joker's figure, vast as a titan, striding through the rift with that same manic grin. His laughter shook the stars. Marat's voice was barely a whisper. He's manifesting. Corm's eyes flickered with disbelief. A no mortal can exist in the void. Not without. He's no mortal, Marat said. Not anymore. The Joker lifted his hand, pressing it to the invisible barrier of the Geller field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a crack formed in the energy field, like glass under strain. His eyes met Marat's through the viewport, and the Inquisitor felt it. A psychic connection, cold and invasive, yet disturbingly playful. You, the Joker whispered, though no sound crossed the void. The words appeared in Marat's mind like graffiti scrawled across sanity. You still believe there's a difference between order and chaos, between me and your gods. Marat drew his bolt pistol, knowing it meant nothing. You're an infection, he said under his breath, and infections burn. The Joker tilted his head, his grin widening. Oh, but laughter spreads faster than fire. Then he was gone. The rift closed, the colors fading into silence. Only the faint echo of laughter remained vibrating through the ship's hull like the aftertaste of a nightmare. Marat exhaled slowly, holstering his weapon. Prepare the exorcist cannon, he ordered. And next time he shows himself, we burn the stars if we must. But deep within the warp, unseen, the laughter grew louder. The gods themselves were beginning to respond, not with wrath, not with fear, but with something far more terrible. Amusement. In the timeless storm of the warp, where causality twisted upon itself and thoughts birthed worlds, something stirred beyond comprehension. The laughter had become a wound in eternity, cutting through prophecy, through destiny, through every thread the changer of ways had ever woven. The tapestry of fate trembled where it once sang in perfect discord, and within that tremor the architect of fate beheld a truth that even he found unbearable. The Joker's presence was not simply noise, it was interference, not chaos, not order, not madness nor sense. It was the absence of meaning itself, mocking all attempts to assign one. The warp could bend it, twist it, attempt to absorb it, but it could not predict it. That alone made it powerful beyond reason. From his shifting throne in the impossible labyrinth, Tizenchi watched through 1,000 eyes. The halls of his domain flickered between cathedrals, caverns and clockwork palaces, all filled with whispers of schemes undone by laughter. Scrolls wrote themselves in reverse. Tomes bled ink in the shape of smiles. Prophecies that once spiraled infinitely now ended in 3 words scrawled across the parchment in crimson. Ha! Ha! 1,000 demon scribes writhed at the feet of their god, wailing apologies for their failure to comprehend. He corrupts the design, master of change, one cried. Every pattern bends toward mockery. The laughter defies translation. Tizench's form shifted, his face reshaping into a swirl of eyes and teeth. It is not corruption, he said softly, his voice like silk cut by razors. It is innovation. His eyes gleamed with something between awe and loathing. A force that changes without intent, that acts without gain. He does not seek power, yet power bends to him. Even my brothers recoil. The demons trembled. Shall we strike him down, my lord? Another dared to ask. Taints chuckled, and the sound split the demon into 1,000 mirrors, each reflecting its own dying scream. A strike him down? The god's tone deepened into something ancient and amused. Oh no, I would have him learn. For even chaos must evolve, or fade into repetition. He extended one of his countless hands, the flesh flowing like molten glass, threads of fate unspooled from his fingers, each one a possible outcome. Some led to madness, others to silence. But there, faint and flickering, was the path that touched the clown. It was blurred, hazy, impossible to focus upon. Even the architect of fate could not read the end. That intrigued him. With a gesture, he tore open the veil. Reality folded inward, and the storm of the warp parted like silk. He stepped into the void where the laughter lived. The Joker sat upon a throne made of broken masks, surrounded by flickering lights that cast his shadow in every direction. He was painting something on the air with his own blood, smiling faces, endless and shifting. When he noticed Tizench's arrival, he clapped his hands in delight. Well, 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 he said, his voice echoing through the void. And here I thought the gods of this little madhouse were too busy squabbling to drop by. You're the bird one, right? All eyes and lies. Hans and Chi's form flickered, feathers turning to smoke, smoke into scales. You are not of this creation, he said, voice deep and layered, each syllable echoing through 1,000 meanings. Yet you shape it as if you were born of its flame. The Joker tilted his head. A shape? Oh no, my feathered friend. I just play. He flicked his bloodied finger, and a ripple passed through the warp, reality bending into a spiral of laughter and pain. You people take yourself so seriously. Fate, faith, destiny, all those fancy words for trying to make sense of nonsense. Tizenchi's eyes narrowed, or perhaps widened. It was hard to tell. You misunderstand. Nonsense is a form of order when understood from a higher dimension. The Joker burst out laughing. And there it is, the punchline. You think you can understand it. You think the joke means something. His laughter deepened, spreading through the air like contagion. That's your problem, birdie. You're the god of change, but you can't stand the kind that doesn't make a point. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Tizenchi extended a hand of pure light. Join me, he said. Together we could rewrite reality. You would be my jest within the script, my trick within the plan. I would make you eternal. The Joker's laughter softened into a grin. He stepped down from his throne, walking close enough for their reflections to blur together. Eternal, huh? That's the one thing you people never get right. Eternity's boring. He leaned forward, whispering, and worse, it's predictable. Tizanchi's feathers bristled, a dozen voices whispering in overlapping tongues. You refuse me. Oh no, I love the offer, the Joker said brightly. But here's the thing, if I start working for you, who's gonna laugh when the joke's on you? He placed a hand on the god's shifting chest and leaned in, eyes wide and gleaming. You see, my whole act works because nobody's in control. Not even me. That's what makes it funny. He turned away, walking into the storm of the warp. Each step left trails of red and green light behind him, reshaping everything they touched. You've got your plans, Birdman. But me? I've got punchlines. Tizanchi's voice followed him, colder now. You think yourself untouchable, mortal? You play with forces you cannot contain. The Joker looked over his shoulder, smiling. A contain? Oh, I'm not trying to contain anything. I'm trying to set it free. He winked. And trust me, they'll all be dying of laughter before the curtain falls. He vanished into the chaos, his laughter echoing long after his presence faded. Tenchi stood alone, surrounded by the trembling air of his own domain. For the first time since his creation, he could not tell whether he had witnessed a victory or a defeat. His hand tightened, the threads of fate twisting into knots that refused to unravel. Then, faintly, the laughter began again. This time not from the clown, but from the warp itself. And the architect of fate realized with dawning horror that even the Imperium had learned to laugh. The laughter lingered in the void like a toxin that refused to fade. Even after the rift closed and the warp's surface stilled, the echoes of that impossible sound clung to every molecule of air aboard the Gloria Invictus. No one spoke of it, though all felt its weight pressing behind their eyes. The ship moved through the silence of real space. But the silence itself felt wrong, strained, as if it were merely the pause between two verses of a song none wished to hear again. Inquisitor Severin Marat stood in his private sanctum, the walls lined with relics and sigils older than the Imperium itself. Candles burned in calculated symmetry, their flames steady despite the absence of gravity. Each light symbolized control, order, faith, small anchors against the storm beyond. And yet tonight, the flames flickered, casting shifting shadows that seemed to grin. Marat's reflection in the obsidian prayer table appeared distorted, warped by some unseen current. He ignored it. His mind was locked on the memory of the Joker's face, the eyes like hollow suns, the smile carved into the flesh of reality itself. He had seen demons masquerading as men, psychers possessed by gods, cults that believed madness was truth, but nothing compared to this. The clown was not corruption. He was contamination. Corm entered quietly, his augmetic footsteps clicking like metronome beats against the metal floor. We have traced the psychic resonance, my lord. It leads to a shrine world, designation Vrax Primus reborn. But the readings are contradictory. Marat turned, his expression sharp. A contradictory how? The tech priest's voice faltered, a rare crack in his machine-like tone. The planet exists in two states simultaneously, one a wasteland, another a city of light. And both are laughing. Marat's jaw tightened. Prepare for descent. Trone and the remnants of the retinue awaited him in the hangar. The psyker's empty chains still hung there, swaying gently, the air around them unnaturally cold. Ilara's absence was felt more than spoken. Each had lost something since the encounter, and yet none dared grieve. There was no time. The inquisitorial gunship descended into the planet's atmosphere, cutting through clouds that glowed with sickly hues. Lightning arced in spirals, forming shapes, faces, eyes, grins that vanished when one blinked. The closer they drew to the surface, the clearer the contradiction became. Below lay a world half dead and half alive. On one side, ruins burned under skies of ash. On the other, towers of gold shimmered in impossible daylight, filled with song and laughter. Trone crossed himself as he stared through the viewport. It's like heaven and hell made a deal. Marat did not answer. His gaze was fixed on the boundary where the two realities met, a thin line of light and shadow stretching across continents. That is where we begin, he said. They landed near the divide. The ground beneath them shifted like water, stone turning soft underfoot. In the distance, a cathedral loomed, a grotesque hybrid of Gothic and Carnival architecture, its spires twisting into banners and ribbons that danced without wind. From within, faint music played. It was the same tune they had heard before, now slow and melancholy. Marat led the way, bolt pistol drawn. Remember, he said, his voice steady. A faith is not a shield, it's a weapon. Use it. As they approached the gates, the air thickened with whispers. The voices came from nowhere and everywhere, overlapping, mocking, begging, laughing. One voice, calm, human, familiar, rose above the rest. Marat, you still chasing ghosts? He froze. The voice was Ilara's. Trone spun, searching the shadows. That's impossible. She's gone. The laughter swelled, filling the cathedral like a tide. The gates opened by themselves, revealing a grand hall where reality itself seemed uncertain. Half of it was divine, a temple of light and gold, filled with statues of saints and angels. The other half was nightmare, a carnival of cracked mirrors and blood-stained banners. At the center stood a figure, arms outstretched as if conducting an invisible orchestra. The Joker turned slowly, his eyes shining with wild delight. Welcome back, my favorite audience. You've come for answers, haven't you? You Inquisitors always do. You can't stand not knowing the punchline. Marat stepped forward, gun steady. You've infected the warp, corrupted the faithful, slaughtered billions. I'm here to end it. The Joker laughed softly, almost pityingly. End it? My dear Inquisitor, you can't end a joke. You can only ruin the timing. The lights dimmed. The golden statues of saints began to move, their faces cracking into grins. They turned toward Marat, their stone mouths splitting open to sing in unison, a hymn of laughter that drowned the sound of thought. Trone fired his weapon, blasting apart one of the statues. Its fragments scattered, but each piece continued laughing. It's feeding on us, he shouted. Marat advanced, each step an act of will. Why? He demanded. Why do this? What do you gain? The Joker stepped closer, his grin softening into something that almost resembled sincerity. You gain? Oh, you poor creature. You still think in lines and ledgers. You think there's meaning to any of this. But look around you. Your God sits on his corpse throne while his children burn. Your demons play games they no longer understand. And me? He spread his arms, the world bending with the motion. I'm the only honest one here. I don't want to win. I just want to laugh while it all burns. Marat aimed directly at his heart. Then, laugh in the ashes, he fired. The bolt round struck true, but the Joker exploded into a cloud of confetti and smoke. His laughter filled the chamber, echoing from every direction. The golden half of the cathedral melted into color, the walls bending, the floor vanishing beneath them. Trone grabbed Marat's arm. We have to retreat. No, Marat said, his eyes blazing with fury. This is his stage. But we make it his grave. He reached into his coat and withdrew a black cylinder etched with inquisitorial sigils, the exterminatus trigger. Trone's breath caught. My lord, that's heresy even for us. Marat pressed the activation rune. A heresy burns both ways. A blinding light consumed the horizon as the cathedral shuddered, laughter rising to meet it. For a single, impossible moment, it seemed as though the Joker's face filled the sky itself, grinning wider, wider still, then everything went white. The light of exterminatus burned away everything, stone, faith, and memory alike. For a brief, merciful instant, the planet of Rax Primus ceased to exist. Every atom screamed, every molecule of corruption torn apart by the Emperor's purifying flame. From orbit, the Gloria Invictus trembled under the force of the detonation, its hull groaning like a dying beast. Even behind layers of adamantium and sanctified glass, the crew shielded their eyes from the fury below. Inquisitor Marat stood unmoving as the storm engulfed the world beneath him. His reflection burned gold in the viewport, the explosion's light painting his face in a false halo. For the first time in years he felt no doubt, only grim finality. He had seen worlds burn before, but this time it felt personal. The Joker's laughter still echoed in his ears, woven into the crackling vox. When the light finally faded, what remained of Rax Primus was a sphere of molten ruin, a silent, ember-red world stripped of all life. Corm's mechanical voice broke the stillness. Exterminatus complete. Planetary biosphere, extinct. Contagion neutralized. Marat's gaze did not move. No laughter, he asked quietly. The tech priest hesitated. None detected, my lord. Trone exhaled, his voice brittle. Then it's done. But even as he said the words, the vox began to crackle. Static at first, then a faint rhythmic sound. A pulse, a whisper, a chuckle. The bridge fell silent. The laughter returned soft and low, rising from the ship's own vox channel. It wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from within. Marat turned sharply, cut all transmissions. Already done, my lord, Corm replied, his augmetic fingers dancing over the console. No external signals detected. The source is internal. The lights dimmed. The ship systems flickered one by one, icons turning from green to red. The vox crackle deepened into distorted words. Knock, knock. The voice was clear this time, smooth, theatrical, familiar. The Joker's tone slithered through the speakers like silk on bone. Oh, come now, Sevi. You didn't really think it would be that easy, did you? You can't burn the punchline. Marat felt his heart slow. He's dead, he said flatly, though the words tasted like ash. Death. The voice laughed light and cruel. You think I die in fires, Fanny? It dances, it laughs, I like fire. No, my dear Inquisitor, what you burned was the stage, but the show. The show goes on. Corm's optical lenses flared red. Ununauthorized code detected in ship systems. Origin unknown, spreading across subsystems. Attempting purge. The laughter grew louder. You can't purge a joke, friend. One by one, the candles in the sanctum extinguished themselves, replaced by green and purple sparks that burned without heat. Marat drew his bolt pistol, though he knew the gesture was meaningless. He turned to Trone. Seal the bridge. No one leaves until we find the source. Trone nodded, activating the blast doors. The heavy slabs of metal slammed shut, but even as they locked, the inquisitorial symbol carved upon them warped, twisting into a mocking grin. Corm's limbs began to jerk, his voice skipping between machine code and laughter. Cognitive corruption detected, pattern replicating across, his words choked into static. Then slowly, his metal face turned toward Marat, and the tech priest began to laugh. Trone raised his weapon instantly, firing 2 rounds into Corm's chest. The shots tore through the mechadendrites, sending sparks across the floor, but the laughter didn't stop. Corm's corpse, half machine, half madness, continued to laugh long after it fell. Marat forced himself to breathe. He's infected the ship's machine spirits, every circuit, every system. Trone's hands shook. That shouldn't be possible. We're cut off from the warp. Marat's eyes darkened. He's not of the warp anymore. He owns it. The ship groaned as though something vast and unseen pressed against its hull. The air shimmered. The air shimmered. The laughter became distant, echoing through the corridors. And then came the voices, dozens, hundreds, whispering over each other, each one a distorted version of his own crew. They spoke his name over and over. Marat, 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 Marat. He moved to the command console, activating the holomap. What he saw froze the blood in his veins. Vrax Primus, the world he had annihilated, was no longer dead. The molten crust had cooled unnaturally fast, reshaping itself into sprawling patterns of light and shadow. Cities began to reform in seconds, not years. And at the planet's center, a colossal image took shape, visible even from orbit. A smile. Marat's voice dropped to a whisper. He's rebuilding it. The Joker's voice returned, almost gentle. You see, my friend, you can't burn an idea. Ideas don't bleed. They don't die. You burn the world, sure, but all those minds, all that fear, that belief, you gave me something better, a bigger audience. Trone slammed his fists on the console, as manifesting through faith, through the psychic residue of the dead. Exactly, the Joker exclaimed with glee. You people do half the work for me. You kill in the name of order. I just finished the joke. Marat's mind raced. There was only one way to sever such a manifestation, a soul-binding exorcism, dangerous, forbidden, but possible. He opened a secure compartment beneath the command console, revealing a small obsidian vial. Inside swirled a fragment of the Emperor's light, a drop of sanctioned faith energy, the kind used to exorcise demonic infestations. Trone saw it and paled. That's suicide. That's suicide. Marat loaded the vial into the containment chamber of the ship's reactor. Maybe. But if the warp has learned to laugh, then faith must learn to scream. The laughter faltered for the first time. Oh, Sevi, the Joker said softly. You're no fun when you're serious. Marat slammed his hand down on the activation rune. The reactor core howled as the vial shattered. Light, pure, searing, golden light flooded every corridor of the Gloria Invictus. The laughter turned into shrieks. The ship trembled, its metal skin blistering from the psychic backlash. Marat fell to his knees, clutching his chest as his veins burned with holy fire. For a moment he saw the Joker's face again, suspended in the light, his grin unwavering. "You can't kill a joke," the clown whispered. "You can only become part of it." Then everything went silent. When Marat opened his eyes, the bridge was gone. The ship was adrift, cold and dark. Trone lay lifeless beside him, the crew reduced to ash. Outside, the ghostly glow of Vrax Primus illuminated the void. The planet now pulsed with faint light like a heartbeat. Marat staggered to his feet, staring down at the reborn world. and from the surface across the gulf of space he swore he could hear it, soft, distant, inevitable. Laughter. The void was quiet again, but the quiet had changed. It wasn't peace, it was anticipation, the breath before a scream. Vrax Primus pulsed below, glowing with the same faint mocking light that now reflected in Marat's eyes as he stared down from the shattered bridge of the Gloria Invictus. He could still feel the psychic residue of the exorcism burning through his veins, a ghost of the Emperor's light that refused to fade. The laughter had stopped, yet he knew it wasn't gone. It was waiting. He reached for the command console, its surface fractured and flickering. The ship was crippled, drifting without power. The once pure sigils of the Inquisition carved into the walls had twisted into crude imitations of grinning faces carved by some invisible hand. Even faith itself seemed warped. He muttered the litany of purity, and for a heartbeat the grin softened, then returned, wider. The vox suddenly crackled to life. At first it was static. Then came a sound like wind rushing through a cathedral's hollow bones, followed by a voice older than language itself. "You have drawn our gaze, mortal." Marat froze. The voice was not singular. It was layered, a chorus of entities speaking as one. The temperature dropped, breath misting before him. "I am Inquisitor Severin Marat of the Ordo Malleus," he said, his voice steady though his heart thundered in his chest. "Identify yourselves. We are what you call gods." The voice replied, "The architects of torment and delight, the eternal minds of the warp. You have unleashed a wound within our realm, a fool that even we cannot bind." The shadows within the ruined sanctum began to move. Shapes flickered into being, 4 silhouettes that shifted like smoke and flame, too vast for mortal comprehension. The air thickened with power, with hatred, with curiosity. Marat fell to one knee as the pressure crushed the breath from his lungs. "You burned his world," one of the voices said, dripping with venom and laughter both. "And in doing so gave him power. You made him immortal in memory." Another spoke, deeper, angrier, like a war drum echoing across eternity. "He mocks the creed of blood. He laughs at slaughter. My warriors falter because of his mirth." A third, dripping with honey and venom, whispered, "He has stolen pleasure from agony and pain from joy. He reshapes my art into farce." And the last, vast and shifting, murmured, "Even I cannot foresee his end." Marat raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot but unbroken. "If he threatens you all," he rasped, "then help me destroy him." The silence that followed was unbearable. Then, soft as silk, one of the voices, the shifting one, spoke. "To destroy what is beyond destruction, you must first understand what he has become. He is not demon, not God, not mortal. He is concept. He feeds upon contradiction, upon faith and doubt alike." Another voice followed, sharp as the crack of bone. "He exists because you do, because mortals believe in meaning and he believes in none." Every prayer, every creed, every commandment whispered into the void fuels his joke. He is the failure of purpose given form. Marat's hands trembled. Then why not erase him? The laughter that answered was like a storm. "Erase him? He is our reflection. He is our reflection. He is chaos stripped of ambition. We are desire. He is indifference. To unmake him would be to unmake us." The shadows swirled closer, their forms burning with divine malice. "But perhaps," one murmured, "we can contain him. For a price." Marat's voice cracked. "What price?" Marat's voice cracked. "What price?" "Your soul," said the chorus. "Your will, your faith, the thing that makes you resist us. You will be our vessel, our executioner. Through you we shall channel the gift we cannot wield directly." Marat hesitated. The thought of serving the gods he had spent his life fighting was an abomination. But the image of Vrax Primus burning again, only to be reborn, laughing, was worse. He clenched his fist. "If it ends him, I'll pay it." The warp trembled. The gods laughed as one. "Then receive our gift." The floor cracked beneath him, revealing a pit of blinding color, fire, ice, blood, and shadow all at once. From it rose a form, shifting between human and divine. It was the essence of the warp itself, an amalgam of all 4 powers, condensed into a single shard of creation. Marat screamed as it entered him. The pain was not physical but cosmic, as if every truth he had ever known was being rewritten. He saw visions, the Joker dancing through the Imperium, twisting reality with every laugh, mocking the gods as they trembled. He saw the Emperor upon his throne, eyes burning with silent fury. And beneath it all he heard the clown's voice whispering, "You're becoming part of the joke, Sevi." When the light faded, Marat was no longer the same. His armor was gone, replaced by robes that shimmered with impossible color. His eyes burned with 4 hues, red, blue, green, and gold. His veins pulsed with divine corruption. The gods spoke one final time. "You are our blade. Go forth, strike him from existence. But remember, our gifts are not mercy." The vision shattered. Marat collapsed onto the cold floor of the Gloria Invictus, gasping for air. The gods were gone, but their presence lingered inside him like poison and fire intertwined. He dragged himself upright and stared once more at the world below. Vrax Primus pulsed brighter now, alive with laughter that even the vacuum could not silence. His hand trembled as he reached for his weapon. Its metal twisted, reshaping into something alien yet familiar, a relic forged by divine mockery. He whispered to himself, voice raw. "If I must damn myself to silence you, clown, then damn me twice." The world below seemed to hear him. The laughter rose once more, echoing across the void. And somewhere deep within the warp, the Joker smiled. The galaxy had not known silence for 10,000 years. The Imperium lived in a constant chorus of screams, prayers, and gunfire. But now, across dozens of systems, the noise had ceased. Vox traffic collapsed into static. Astropathic choirs fell mute. Ships drifted without command. A terrible quiet spread, and in its wake, laughter whispered beneath it, faint as a heartbeat. The warp had gone still, not dead but waiting, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. Inquisitor Marat stood alone upon the bridge of the Gloria Invictus, his reflection framed by the faint mocking glow of Vrax Primus. The planet shimmered like a wound in the void, its continents forming patterns that seemed deliberate, curved lines, circular shadows, the faint impression of a grin carved across its surface. He had seen worlds burn, but never one smile. The gods had left him changed. The warp still hissed in the corners of his mind, a chorus of whispers that never stopped speaking. He could feel their power in every movement, the way reality bent subtly around him, how his thoughts echoed beyond his skull. When he closed his eyes, he saw more than light. He saw will. More. His faith was still his own, but it burned now with the same fire that powered the demons he once hunted. The irony was not lost on him. He turned his gaze from the viewport and activated the ship's remaining calms. The hollow projection of Lord Inquisitor Valen flickered to life, his image unstable and pale. The older man's face was carved from suspicion and authority. "Severin," Valen said, his voice rough. "Reports have reached Terra. Entire sectors are failing. The warp is changing. Your name keeps appearing in the astropathic residue. Explain yourself." Marat's reply was quiet even. The infection was not a demon. It was an idea. It spread beyond containment. Valen frowned. "You speak in riddles." "He's not a riddle," Marat said. "He's the punchline." Valen's expression darkened. "If this is some philosophical indulgence, I'll have your mind scoured." Marat stepped closer to the projection. "You can't scour an idea, Lord Valen. You can only replace it with a stronger one. That's what the Emperor tried to do. What the Chaos Gods failed to understand. But this thing, this clown, he doesn't want power. He doesn't want to rule. He wants to end meaning itself." The hollow flickered. For a moment, Valen's image distorted, his mouth twisting into a grin not his own. Pan. Then the connection severed with a sharp crack of static. Marat stared at the empty space where the projection had been. He already knew where the trail led. There was only one place where such an idea could root itself fully, where all human thought converged, where the greatest psychic beacon in existence pulsed like a dying star. Terra. He issued no commands. The ship moved on its own, as though guided by unseen hands. Warp travel was smoother now, disturbingly so. The storms parted for him. Even the warp lights seemed to watch in silence. Time blurred as the Gloria Invictus approached the Sol system, its hull flickering with echoes of laughter that no crew remained alive to hear. When Terra came into view, Marat felt the breath leave him. The Astronomicon no longer blazed gold. It shimmered with alternating hues of red and green, flickering like a candle choking on its own smoke. The light of the Emperor's will had been touched by something alien, something that smiled. He descended alone. The great halls of the Imperial Palace stretched before him, endless and hollow. The air was thick with incense and dust. Custodians moved in silence, their armor glinting faintly under the dying light. They did not speak to him as he passed. Perhaps they could feel what lingered inside him. Perhaps they feared it. The gates of the Sanctum Imperialis loomed ahead, massive, carved from gold and sorrow. He entered. The chamber beyond was vast enough to contain cities, its air vibrating with the weight of psychic energy. The golden throne stood at its heart, a monument of light and ruin. The emperor's body still seated within, half flesh, half machine, his presence a constant pressure against the minds of all mankind. Marat approached, each step heavier than the last. The laughter grew faint again, as if holding itself back. He stopped at the base of the dais, bowing his head. "My lord," he said, voice hoarse, "forgive my intrusion. But the galaxy burns with a madness that even your light cannot contain. The warp itself laughs now. I have seen the gods tremble. They gave me power to fight what they could not destroy. And yet," he paused, looking up at the emperor's unmoving form, "and yet I fear even they are part of the joke." There was no reply. The emperor did not move. The astronomicon pulsed weakly above, its dying glow spilling through the chamber like fading sunlight. Marat sank to his knees. "Tell me what to do," he whispered. "Tell me how to end this." For a long moment there was only silence. Then, barely audible, the sound of metal shifting. The air trembled. From be free. The emperor's eyes opened. They did not blaze gold as the legends claimed. They glowed pale blue, distant and unreadable. A light without warmth. The psychic pressure in the room increased tenfold, crushing Marat against the marble floor. He felt his mind stripped bare, his thoughts laid open before a will that dwarfed God's. The emperor's voice did not come as sound, but as certainty. "You brought him here." Marat's vision blurred. He saw flashes, worlds laughing, stars bending into shapes, the warp itself cracking under the weight of absurdity. "I tried to destroy him," he gasped. "I burned worlds, sacrificed everything. You gave him purpose." The words echoed in his mind colder than any scream. He realized then what the gods had failed to see. The Joker's power did not come from the warp. It came from humanity's own despair, from every mind that had stopped believing in meaning but refused to stop existing. A faith and mockery were the same currency, both paid into him. Marat lifted his head. "What do I say?" The emperor's eyes were fixed on him, unblinking. "Then end me," Marat said. "If my existence feeds him, end it." There was no mercy in that gaze, only inevitability. The chamber darkened. The astronomicon flared once, brilliant, blinding, and in its light, Marat saw the faintest reflection of a grin upon the emperor's lips. Then the laughter returned, rolling through the palace, through terror, through the galaxy itself. And high upon the golden throne, the corpse god of mankind sat unmoving, his eyes open, his lips curved ever so slightly upward. The laughter echoed through the vaults of the imperial palace like thunder rolling through a graveyard. It slithered between the statues of saints and martyrs, through the catacombs of golden bone, up into the blood-stained air of terror's eternal dusk. It had no source. It came from the cracks between thoughts, the spaces between faith and despair. The sound was not loud, but it was endless, mocking, cold, and familiar. Marat knelt at the base of the golden throne, his body trembling under the psychic weight of the emperor's gaze. He could still feel the echo of that faint smile he had seen, impossible, imperceptible, yet real enough to curdle his blood. The emperor's lips had moved. Whether it was a trick of the mind or the first motion in 10,000 years, Marat did not know. He only knew that the laughter grew louder the longer he stayed. He staggered to his feet, clutching his chest. The voices of the gods still whispered inside him, but now they too sounded uncertain, fractured, laughing and weeping in the same breath. He stumbled backward down the dais, his boots slipping on the polished marble. The custodians still stood motionless at the edges of the hall, their visors turned toward the throne. None spoke, but Marat could feel their unease like static. Then the astronomicon pulsed again. The light above the throne turned crimson and gold, swirling together in unnatural hues. Reality itself began to distort. The walls flexed as though breathing, the gold melting into shapes that rippled like wet paint. The sound of laughter deepened, now resonating through the entire palace. Statues split open, revealing faces beneath, painted white, with smiles carved in red. Marat raised his weapon, though he knew it was useless. "Show yourself," he shouted, his voice raw. "End this masquerade." The air shimmered, and from the far end of the chamber, a figure stepped forth. His footsteps echoed softly, each one a note in the growing chorus of laughter. His coat was torn, his hair burned by cosmic fire, his grin the same, eternal, merciless, amused. "Did you miss me?" the Joker asked. Marat's breath caught. "You were burned, erased." "The gods themselves gave me an audience," the clown interrupted, spreading his arms as if bowing to invisible applause. "And oh, what a performance it's been. The gods tried to contain me, the Inquisition tried to kill me, and even your shiny golden idol smiled at the joke. Marat's voice cracked. You defiled him. Defiled? The Joker laughed, his head tilting back. Oh no, my friend. I freed him. You people locked him on a chair for 10,000 years, whispering prayers he can't hear. Me? I told him the truth. His eyes gleamed like broken glass. That he's the biggest punchline in the galaxy. Marat aimed his pistol, its barrel trembling. You dare pull off? The Joker leaned forward, smiling wider. Someone had to. The light flared again, blinding and cold. Blinding and cold. The Joker's laughter mixed with another, deeper, vast, mechanical echoing from the throne itself. Marat froze as the sound filled the air. The custodians turned their helms toward the Emperor, their armor shaking as if under the weight of an earthquake. The golden figure on the throne twitched. Once, then again, the laughter grew louder. No, Marat whispered. No, this isn't real. The Joker circled him slowly, his steps soundless. Yo, it's very real. Your god gets the joke now, the great Emperor of mankind finally understands. Faith and madness are the same thing when the lights go out. The air cracked with psychic energy. The marble beneath their feet split open, molten light spilling from the fractures. Marat felt something inside him stir, the divine power gifted by the gods rising like fire in his veins. His eyes burned with color as he turned his fury toward the clown. Boy, you mock creation itself, he said, voice trembling with restrained power. But even chaos has a limit. Then test it, the Joker whispered. Marat screamed and unleashed the full force of his corrupted soul. Light exploded from his body, white and violet, gold and crimson, all at once. It tore through the air like lightning, striking the Joker head-on. The clown staggered back, his body disintegrating, skin peeling into ribbons of smoke and laughter. For a moment the sound faltered. For a moment Marat thought it was done. Then the laughter changed. It became his own. Fun. Marat froze as the echoes bounced back to him, his own voice laughing in 1,000 variations. His reflection stared at him from the molten cracks, smiling. The Joker's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. You see, Sevi, that's the thing about a joke. It only ends when everyone gets it. Laughter swelled. The Joker's form reappeared, rising from the light itself, his grin glowing brighter than the stars. You can't kill an idea because you're part of it now. You're my favorite part, the straight man. Marat fell to his knees, his strength fading. No, he muttered. I am no demon. I am no pawn. Oh, but you are, the Joker whispered. The moment you took their gift, you joined the act. You're the balance, the reason, the tragedy that makes the comedy work. He knelt beside Marat, placing a hand under his chin. And now it's time for the finale. Marat raised his eyes, defiance flickering through the madness. If this is your stage, he said, then I'll bring down the curtain myself. He plunged his blade. An inquisitorial relic turned warp-forged weapon into his chest. The god's energy within him detonated. A flash of impossible light consumed them both, swallowing laughter, light and sound. The palace walls shook, collapsing inward. The astronomicon flared one final time, brighter than it had in millennia, before vanishing completely. When the light faded, the throne stood silent again. The Joker was gone. Marat's body lay at the Emperor's feet, burned to ash but smiling faintly, as if in peace or mockery. The custodians stood frozen, uncertain whether they had witnessed salvation or blasphemy. And somewhere, far beyond the veil of the warp, a quiet chuckle stirred the silence. And the laughter began anew. The galaxy burned in silence. The astronomicon was gone. Across 1,000,000 worlds, ships drifted without guidance, their navigators blind. Astropaths screamed into the void, hearing only laughter where once there had been light. Yet in the ruins of faith and empire, life continued to move, halting, fearful and trembling beneath a sky that no longer answered prayers. The age of the Imperium had not ended in fire, but in irony. On Terra, the once golden palace stood dim and fractured. The air hung thick with dust and memory. The custodians no longer spoke. They merely watched, uncertain if they still served a god or a corpse. The throne itself had gone dark, its machinery silent for the first time in 10,000 years. The Emperor's body sat unmoving, and yet the faint curl at the corner of his lips remained. That single, impossible smile. From the ashes below the dais a single ember stirred. It pulsed faintly, whispering with the echo of Inquisitor Marat's voice, a voice stretched thin by eternity, caught somewhere between man and myth. The ember floated upward, flickering once, twice before vanishing into the air like the last spark of a dying star. And in the void between worlds, the warp listened. It had always been alive, but now it remembered. It remembered laughter. It remembered the way the clown had moved through it, untamed, unafraid, unchained. The echo of his presence was woven into its substance, a permanent scar upon infinity. The gods stirred in their domains, their powers weakened but not gone. Khorne's realm lay silent. The rivers of blood had slowed, thickened, and grown cold. His champions, once roaring in endless slaughter, now sat in silence, sharpening weapons that no longer sang. A faint echo drifted through the brass towers, soft, mocking. A single chuckle. The blood god clenched his fists, his eyes burning with rage that could find no target. For every time he thought of war, the sound would return, soft and knowing. Why so serious? In Nurgle's garden, the plagues had stopped blooming. The grandfather sat in confusion, his laughter gone. His children lay still in their filth, their bodies swelling but never bursting, their disease stagnant. And yet amidst the rot something sprouted, a small white flower with crimson edges shaped like a smile. Nurgle reached for it, his swollen hand trembling, but when he touched it, it burst into dust that smelled faintly of old smoke and grease paint. Slaanesh's palace was empty. The mirrors that lined the endless halls reflected nothing but grinning masks, each painted differently, each whispering the same word, funny. The Dark Prince screamed, but even their shriek carried rhythm, a melody that circled back into laughter before fading to silence. And in the shifting maze of Tench, the god of change watched in fury as his plans folded upon themselves. Every scheme, every prophecy, every thread he tried to weave turned into loops that led back to the same point. The clown's grin, forever mocking, forever unpredictable. The architect of fate who had foreseen all possibilities now found himself trapped in one he could neither end nor escape. It cannot last, he whispered to himself, though he did not believe it. But the warp was not merely their realm anymore. It was something new. The Joker had left more than corruption behind. He had left awareness. The Imperium now understood itself as a joke told to no one by no one, a paradox of creation that laughed at its own futility. In this new silence, demons began to change. Their forms grew strange, their identities blurred. Some took on colors that had never existed before, green, white, and red, painted with manic precision. They no longer screamed their masters' names. They whispered riddles, told stories, or simply laughed without reason. And wherever their laughter spread, reality bent a little further, a little freer, until the boundaries between nightmare and comedy vanished. Somewhere in that churning sea of madness, a figure floated. His body was burned away, his face half-formed, but the smile remained. The Joker's eyes opened slowly, glinting with cold amusement. He had no flesh, no breath, no heartbeat, but he was alive, or something very close to it. "Well," he murmured, his voice echoing through the warp like the ghost of an idea, "that was one hell of an encore." The warp responded. The laughter rippled outward, not as mockery now, but as rhythm, like the first beat of a new creation. He drifted in the current, his reflection fracturing into 1,000 copies of himself, each grinning wider, each speaking in unison. They thought they could control it, he said. That chaos was their toy, but chaos doesn't play favorites, it just plays. He glanced upward, through layers of unreality, toward the faint shimmer of the Materium. He could feel humanity's fear, its confusion, its desperate attempts to rebuild meaning. And somewhere, deep within that despair, he heard something that almost made him pause, a prayer. A single human voice, trembling yet defiant. "Emperor, protect us." The Joker's grin widened. "Oh, he's protecting you, all right, you're just not gonna like the joke." He extended his hand, and the currents of the warp bent around it, reshaping themselves into crude puppets, demons painted like jesters, saints wearing masks of clowns. They danced and spun in mockery of both divine and infernal. He watched them with a child's delight, then let them crumble into ash. "A balance," he said softly. "That's the trick. You can't have laughter without tears, faith without doubt, gods without fools. And lucky you," his grin sharpened, "I'm both." Somewhere in the deep warp, beyond even the reach of the gods, something ancient stirred. A voice older than time itself, the collective soul of humanity's dreams and nightmares, whispered his name, not as curse, not as prayer, but as acknowledgement. The warp had accepted him. The Joker laughed, not loud, not manic, but quiet and true. "I guess that makes me immortal after all." Back on Terra, the Emperor's eyes closed once more. The faint smile faded from his face. The Golden Throne's lights flickered weakly, trying to reignite, but each spark died in turn. The Astronomicon did not return. For the first time mankind was alone, truly alone, and yet in the dreams of every human that night the same vision came, a shadow walking through the stars grinning. His laughter was soft, almost kind. Some woke in terror, others woke laughing. In the end it did not matter. The joke had already been told, and somewhere in the boundless dark between stars the laughter began again, quiet at first, then louder, until even the gods paused to listen.